to the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Rich, thanks for coming back on with us. You know, I want to talk about that last line I read there. You know, these protesters in Israel, they want PM Netanyahu to reach a deal, but is that even possible at this point when you're dealing with a group like Hamas?
Well, we don't really know. I mean, as far as we understand from all press reports and information I've received from people on both sides of the ocean over the last several months, Prime Minister Netanyahu has gone along with everything President Biden has asked him to do, at times certainly under intense U.S. pressure to get there against his better instincts for Israel's national security. But the deals on the table that have been presented and endorsed by the United States have been supported by Israel. And every single time, Hamas has said no. And so the question, of course, is, could Netanyahu offer them the moon and they would still say no because they think that they are somehow winning against Israel, the psychological torment that a night like this takes on a country like Israel, while still getting squeezed by the rest of Iran's terror axis. Obviously, Hezbollah there in Lebanon, we're seeing the terror cells in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, with suicide bombers, car bombers, all kinds of attacks being plotted there. The Houthis in Yemen, and of course Iran itself with its missile and drone capability and its nuclear program. So the question, of course, before us is, we know Israel has complicated politics, to say the least. I think Israeli domestic politics make American politics oftentimes look rather normal. And so I think we will see convulsion, as we've seen for many months and years in Israel. But as Americans, we just lost an American citizen to a brutal terrorist organization. How evil it is that they decided, as we're learning tonight, to murder this 23-year-old in cold blood and the other hostages he was with, rather than allow the IDF that was closing in to be able to release, to get him back, to rescue him. They decided to kill him. That's just pure evil. Of course, we understand this is about a kilometer from where a Druze Israeli, a Muslim Israeli, was rescued just a few days prior. And so you sort of wonder if Hamas at a leadership level didn't know but felt like the Israelis were closing in on the hostages. Is Israel closer than we think they are? That is the other side of the coin here to think about tonight. The Israeli security establishment probably looking over all the intelligence here. Where are the other hostages? How close are they getting? Where is Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in Gaza? Are they closing in on him as well? These are all going to be the questions. If Hamas is in its 11th hour and is still saying no to every ceasefire offer put forward, waiting for better terms, perhaps in coordination with the rest of the Iran terror axis, the government has to ask itself, what are they going to do? They can put forward more offers, but in the end, they need to find Sinwar, the leader of Hamas. They need to kill this man. And we in the United States should help them do that. And we should also be putting enormous pressure on all the sponsors of Hamas to bring down the hammer as much as possible. We should not leave any stone unturned here. If we have pressure we haven't brought to bear on Iran, on Qatar, on Egypt, on Turkey, on Lebanon, all sponsors and enablers of Hamas, we've done something wrong here for the last almost 11 months. That should be our priority. The Israeli politics are going to be tumultuous. We're going to watch that on TV. It's going to be hard for us to interpret as Americans, understand they have pretty brutal politics there. There are going to be people asking Netanyahu to come to the table with better terms for Hamas. There are going to be people saying he shouldn't. We should understand what has happened to us as a country, as Americans. A citizen of ours was murdered brutally, and we should bring all of our power and influence to bear to hold Hamas and its sponsors accountable.
Yeah, and I mean, at what point, though, does Netanyahu, I mean, as you said, he has gone along and done what the Biden administration has wanted him to do so far. But at what point does he stop listening to them, or does he even have that capability right now? Does he need the U.S. that much? I mean, if you're saying that he could be this close to these other hostages and taking out some of these people in this Hamas terror group, I mean, does he need the Biden administration for that?
Well, you don't want to have an enemy of the United States, your closest friend and ally. There are a lot of levers the United
But
States
Rich,
can
if
pull
you
on,
look at
and
what's
we've
happening,
seen.
you say that America is their closest ally, but they are not taking Israel's side 100%. They are in limbo in the middle of the road.
So I obviously agree with that. The policies of the last several months, I've been one of the leading critics of. The idea that you would pressure Israel for months not to go into Rafah, where these bodies were found, where these hostages may have been held, where other hostages may be held. Obviously now, anybody who was against that operation, was pressuring Israel not to go into Rafah, has a lot to answer for. Those who said they were studying the maps and it concluded that Israel should not go into Rafah, obviously speaking about our vice president, has a lot to answer for. That said, at this moment, if you're Israel, you do still need the weapons that are coming in from the United States. And there's a lot coming in finally after months of delay, because they're also facing the massive threat from Hezbollah on their northern border. They have a big operation now going on against Iranian-backed cells, Hamas cells, in the West Bank as well. They have missiles and drone threats from elsewhere in the Middle East, the Houthis in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, and of course the missile threat still looming from Iran itself. And of course we have 2 carrier strike groups in the region, the United States deterrence projection, the ability to defend Israel from an attack by Iran. These are all things that are playing into this. The United Nations, the International Criminal Court's investigations, all of this in a very complicated decision-making matrix for the Prime Minister of Israel. The bottom line is this: what is the holdup here? Why is there no ceasefire? What are the terms we're talking about on the table here that supposedly are the go, no-go for a deal? It is whether or not Israel will maintain some sort of security control for the time being over this area between Egypt and Gaza, where we have now discovered hundreds of tunnels, where Hamas needs tunnels reestablished, needs smuggling routes reestablished to resupply its fighters, to just come back like a thunderbolt to take control of Gaza, so that we go back to October 6th instead of learning the lessons of October 7th. And so I have not met one Israeli, those who are hypercritical of Bibi Netanyahu, who believes Israel should give up control of that area until such time as they've built a deep underground wall below that border, the way they did on the Gaza border, to prevent new tunnel smuggling from being established there, and then above ground, some sort of joint operation with the Egyptians to ensure they can't allow any smuggling through the border crossings with Egypt above ground. I've not met one privately who will say that Israel should just get out of the Philadelphia corridor. And so they know that if Israel does that, they go back to October 6th, that there could be another October 7th, that the hundreds of Israeli soldiers who have given their lives so far in this war to rid themselves of the Hamas threat, their lives would have been lost in vain. And that is also weighing on the Prime Minister of Israel, despite what you will see in the coming hours of many Israelis, mostly of the left in Israel, but others as well, who will be coming out to say to the Prime Minister he needs to concede more to Hamas.
You know, I couldn't imagine being a loved one of any of these hostages, and just knowing now that these bodies were found under that tunnel, it's horrifying. Like I said, I wouldn't want to put myself in that situation ever. You know, with that being said, there's still over 100 that are left. I mean, I know people are saying that they're staying positive about this and they're hopeful, but these people are diabolical. These are not people. These are evil beings, and it makes you wonder if we're going to bring them home to their families where they belong, or if it's going to be another situation to where we're bringing a body home for a funeral.
Yeah, and obviously Hamas intended for that sort of psychological anguish to be with us on a night like this. The fact that they decided to murder these hostages before they could be rescued, is for us to have this conversation, is for people to take to the streets in Israel tomorrow. It is to add basically lemon juice on the open cut that Israel has suffered since October 7th, driving more and more suffering into the heart of the Israeli population, hoping to get more concessions. And of course, in the wider Iran axis, ensuring that this part of Iran's operational plan stays intact so that Gaza remains a threat, the larger threat in Lebanon from Hezbollah remains, and then all the other threats we've talked about. I can't imagine being any of the family members. I've met with many. I've talked with many. It's hard. I have a policy mind. I have a strategy mind. I've served in the White House, the National Security Council. I've served on Capitol Hill. I approach certain things from that part of my mind of what I would do in a vacuum, understanding what is at stake here, and at a strategic level, what the right choices might be from a policy level. At the same time, I'm a father, and I just can't imagine what they are going through and what they would want to have happen to see their loved one come home. That is the anguish. That is the hardship that is going on that we can't imagine inside Israel tonight.
Yeah, and it's horrible to think about, because these people are they just want their family member back no matter how they have to do it. They don't care. They just want them back. Meanwhile, the politics of the world are happening around it, and that just makes it all that much worse. So your final thoughts on what's happened today and this information we got?
Yeah, listen, I'm probably one of the most critical people you'll find in the entire country of the Biden administration's handling of these policies and strategy the last 11 months to quote unquote bring them home. I've advocated for a very different approach. I can't tell you that if anybody had adopted my policy, Hersh would be alive tonight. I also, to those out there who are critical of Prime Minister Netanyahu, who are going to take to the streets and urge him to concede more to Hamas, I don't think anybody can tell you that if Bibi Netanyahu offers Hamas the moon, that they will take it. That somehow if he had said yes to more concessions a week ago, that Hersh or other hostages would still be alive. Because to your point, this is an evil terrorist organization. And if you are dealing with an evil terrorist organization like this, your policies and strategy should be governed accordingly. And that means doing all you can to hunt down and kill their leaders, destroy their infrastructure, and hold every one of their state sponsors fully accountable.
You can't make deals with evil. I'm just going to leave it at that. All right, Rich, thank you so much for your time once again. We appreciate it. And if you're just now tuning in America.